Now, this presentation is broken into two parts. Firstly, there's a bit about strategy and just about how to go about thinking about the types of people I want in my SEO team, the types of people I want to work with agency-wise, thinking about, the skill set that they've got. And there's a very specific skill set we'll be talking to as a separator for great SEOs. Once we get past that, we'll be talking much more tactically. So a lot of the thought leadership and other types of content you're hearing today and tomorrow, is, amazing sort of, high thinking about your business and how can we kind of redirect strategy and that sort of stuff. This presentation is in the weeds. It's very tactical. It's stuff you could literally grab and potentially have an impact on your site. So I guess I should ask, how many people in this room have SEO somewhere in their remit? Either they're on the tools or it's someone in their team is specifically in charge of it. Yep, we've got a few. Okay, there's a handful. Yeah, there's a handful of people. Great. So for you guys, if you're on the tools, some of this stuff you can implement, or you'll be talking to your team, talking to your agency. For everyone else, it's just interesting. For me, I'm an SEO nerd. It's just interesting content to get you thinking a little bit more about some of the granular stuff that you can do from an SEO perspective to start thinking about when you're talking to your own marketing team, an SEO team. Okay, cool. So the first part is learning from the world's best SEO practitioners, and the second part is the tactical stuff. Myself, just a quick little summary again. So I'm based in Texas, SEO nerd. I've been in digital marketing, specifically digital marketing for 10 years, but marketing in general for about 20 years. I was buying Google AdWords for an events business in 2003, 2004, paying 6 cents a click. We're buying banner ads because the guy selling the banner inventory told me, trust me, they're going to click. Your audience, they love this stuff. So I was buying that alongside print and outdoor and all sorts of stuff way back in the day. 10 years pure digital marketing, multiple-time founder, a 2-time SEMrush award winner for 2 separate campaigns, one for an e-commerce brand and another I won the award for a real estate brand. So lots of experience. I also host a series and a podcast called SEO Success. So SEO Success Stories, every 2 weeks we interview, I get to basically pick the brain of the world's best SEOs. So from IHOP and Applebee's, Virgin, JLL, Vodafone. So lots of really big, well-known brands. Because as someone who is, very passionate about search and about SEO, I know that I know just a tiny little bit about it, and there's so much more out there, and there's lots of really clever people. So I thought, what a good idea to pick their brains and find out more. And I'll just record it and share that content with people around the world. So those are some of the biggest brands we speak to. We've also spoken to educators and just really smart people, much smarter than myself, from Ahrefs, SEMrush. We had, actually in Houston at this event, we had the author of Product-Led SEO, Eli Schwartz, had the head of, actually live right now, the most recent episode is the head of SEO at Shopify, Kevin Indig, super intelligent dude. I definitely recommend digging into that. But anyway, really clever people on this SEO podcast. And, on the podcast, we talk strategy and we talk tactics, but from a strategic perspective, there's just one common theme that keeps on coming up. Now, I ask one question at the top of every episode. You're going to hear that question about 6 times in a row now, so I'll just apologize in advance. But it really is just trying to think, okay, well, what do the best of the best, what's their biggest bottleneck? What do they think is stopping them from achieving success within SEO? And soft skills, it really is like the biggest separator between good and great SEOs. I don't know about you guys, but most of the really good SEOs that I've worked with over the last 10 years, if I think in my mind's eye about, what are they doing? If I see them at work, they've usually got their headphones on, they're knee-deep in code or in a spreadsheet or something. They don't want anyone to come near them. And that can be great. On the tools, they're amazing. They're highly analytical. They're super driven. They can focus like crazy, which is amazing. But the thing with SEO is it doesn't get to play on its own field out in the middle of nowhere with the tools on and not interact with anyone else. SEO really specifically is more of a consultative type role where you are impacting. What are some of the areas within a marketing team, for those that are in or not in SEO in this room, what are some of the other parts of marketing that SEO actually impacts or has to deal with regularly? Anything? Content, definitely. What else? Pardon?
Lead gen.
Potentially lead gen. We should probably be using that mic, but that's okay. Yes, yeah, lead gen. What other parts of a marketing team? Strategy, yep. So for those listening at home, I am saying it so you're not missing anything. Strategy. But then you've got UX, UI, dev, design, all of these different product, all of these different parts of the business that when an SEO thinks or says this is going to have an impact on the business, it's not just like they can do it. They actually need to, connect the dots and line up a bunch of other people. How well can someone who is headphones on, down, just really honed in on what they're doing, how well are they going to be communicating that to a big range of people? Probably not their most ideal use of their skills. So that's where the best SEOs come in with that separator.
What do you feel is the number one biggest challenge that SEOs face in 2021?
I would actually say this is a challenge that has been around for a very long time. It's highlighting the importance of SEO to clients. Forget about Google algorithms and everything. I think that's all secondary. The primary thing is how do you get your business to understand the role of SEO in your complete marketing funnel. Once you're able to do that, then things automatically progress. The clients understand the importance of SEO, and that's how you go. So the challenge here is how do you put through a narrative that will help clients understand that this is where SEO will contribute to my marketing funnel.
That's Martine Agger, Global Head of SEO for Virgin Megastores, just talking about having to communicate this vision that you've got, communicate these important, really technical things.
What do you feel is the number one challenge facing SEOs in 2022? Go.
I think it's the same thing that's been facing them for a long time, that no one trusts them at all and that they think they're dodgy. So I think that's the number one problem, building credibility and trust with customers.
So building credibility, again, a lot easier to do if you can actually communicate with people, if you can talk to them about why you're doing what you're doing.
What is the number one challenge facing SEOs in 2022?
I love that question. Getting things done. I've been, in doing SEO probably now 15, 16 years. We are advisors. We are not doers. There are a few of us that can program. There are a few of us that can write content, but ultimately we're coming up with strategies and plans and we can't get things done. And I'd say whether you're in-house or a consultant or a blogger, anything you are, making things happen. You need people around you. And I think the biggest challenge is always, you've got a great plan. How do you get that plan to happen in a reasonable amount of time? That I think is the biggest challenge, getting things done, making things happen.
Anyone into SEO might know that name already, but he's got a book called Product-Led SEO. Super clever character, but again, just talking about how important it is to be able to get people along board this vision. So I'm probably beating a dead horse a little bit here, but I just want you to think about, okay, are my internal resources doing that? When I'm vetting agencies, have that as part of that process when you're vetting the agency. Do I really feel like this person, this team is going to be able to motivate my developers, my content, my product team, whoever it is, to make the changes that they're going to need to be effective in improving our SEO?
What do you think is the biggest challenge, the number one challenge facing SEOs in 2022?
Such a good question. There's so many ones that I can think of just from a ranking perspective. But if I had to put my finger on the number one challenge that the SEOs are going to have in 2022 is really going to be about proving the value of the ROI of SEO. So, we're still in this time of COVID where, things are still uncertain. It's putting a lot of emphasis on what the power of external search can do. And so it takes a lot of multiple different strategies in order to really move the needle to become number one or to get the highest rankings you can on Google. And so being able to prove the value of those strategies, I think, are going to be really important this year.
Leanne Follis, Global Head of SEO for JLL, the world's second largest commercial real estate firm, I believe. Her colleague is actually going to be here tomorrow, Lorena Morales from JLL as well. But again, communication, soft skills, I think this is the last one before we start getting into it. No, that was it. Cool. So tactics, did I skip one? Nope. Tactics are important. Just try not to follow the same process as everyone else. I think I might have skipped the video. Hold on. There we go.
What is the number one biggest challenge that SEOs face in 2022? Go.
Differentiating yourself from what others are doing. Stop following checklists and really think outside the box.
Okay, so that was the last one. That was Steve Wiedemann. He's head of SEO for Applebee's, and just huge experience in helping big brands get found both locally and nationally. And his take was a little bit different to everyone else's. His was just, stop following those checklists. What are you doing to differentiate? For him, a big part of it is, are you actually allocating time to experimentation, to running tests, to doing the things outside of just the day-to-day execution? So that was a big learning from him. Okay, cool. So I think I was pretty clear on that. When you're talking to your SEOs or when you're evaluating your SEOs, just think about how they can communicate their vision, because if they can't do it well, they're not going to get a lot done. So now getting into the actual tactical tips, we've got 22 tips to grow your organic traffic in 2022. Ready, set? Okay, let's go. All right, so just to set the table, these are kind of beginner-ish to intermediate, some of them, tips. So most of the tips are broadly applicable. There's a slight slant to e-commerce. Can I have a show of hands? Who is e-commerce focused in here? How many people? Direct to consumer? Only a handful. Well, I've got about 8 people. Cool. Okay, so there is a slight slant that way, but that said, we've got more lead gen type tips on their way through the presentation as well. Now, for e-commerce specifically, we as an agency, we break e-commerce sites into 2 types of sites. So you've got a spec-based or specification-based, and then design-based. This will make sense. As I'm making my way through some of these tips, it'll make a bit more sense. But basically, a spec-based e-commerce site is focused on products, and a design-based is focused on categories. So when I say products versus categories, what I'm saying is a spec-based e-commerce site has people searching for much more specific models, specific items, like really, really specific items, as opposed to categories. So a good example would be, I'm onboarding 2 new staff last week, and I had to get a specific model of Dell laptop with our ideal specs in terms of RAM and CPU and all that sort of stuff. So I'm doing a very specific search. However, for categories, design-based, that could be something more like, for those new staff, I would like them to have standing desks. I'm not particularly phased which brand or what the specs are of that standing desk. I just want to know what the options are. So I'm basically going to be searching more from a broader category-based type of search. Understanding this stuff at the front end just makes the rest of the SEO strategy make sense all the way through. I'll be talking a little bit about crawl budget. So when I do talk about that, basically just know that crawl budget is the number of pages that the Googlebot will crawl and index a website within a Google timeframe. So it's a finite thing. So when I'm talking about not wasting your crawl budget, Google is not just going to spend forever going through all of your site. So you need to make sure that if they are crawling and indexing your site, you've got them indexing and then ranking the pages that you actually want ranked. So we'll talk a bit about that. Cool. Okay, let's go. Tip 1 for e-commerce, you can prevent product page duplication by ensuring the product variants canonicalize to the base product URL. Okay, so just as an example there, can everyone see that? You probably can't, but basically what we've got there, canonicalizing means which URL do we want Google to actually index and rank. So for this particular item, this is Nordstrom. What they've got is they've decided when someone searches for the BB decoder and it shows up in a search, there is a few different colors it could show up in. It could be black, blue, red, etc., etc. But we don't want all of those colors to get indexed and ranked. We only need one of them indexed and ranked. So we're going to choose one. You might choose to just have a generic product, which is the one which gets canonicalized. What Nordstrom do, and lots of businesses will do, especially bigger ones, is they'll just have a code written which aligns with their inventory. And if there's a particular product that they need to move, then that's the one that's going to get served. So that's an automated script that does that. For non-e-com sites, because we've got a big chunk of you in here like this, content duplication on blog pages. So Copyscape is what we use as an agency. It's a great way to identify any content which has been duplicated from external sites. So serious duplication is anything more than 30%. It's really hard to write fully original content. Does anyone ever have that idea? Like, how many original ideas are out there? It's tough, but that number 30% or more is when you need to start going, okay, we need to look at how we can change this up a little bit. Tip 2, prevent thin content by fleshing out at least 200 to 300 words of relevant content on the category pages. So let's say, who's got an e-commerce site here? Someone throw up your hand. We had some people earlier throw up their hand and now they're shy. Yes. What's your e-commerce site? What's the product? Yep. Ah, okay, cool. That's different. Okay, cool. So, but that's fine. So mortgages. So there'd be specific types of mortgages. There's a range. Yep. Excellent. So if you've got people searching through on a mobile phone, right? What you don't want is they land on one of those specific types of mortgages and just a bunch of content, like words with no call to action, not very engaging. What we're saying here is we don't want you to build out that page with just a ton of words that is just going to make it really annoying for the UX. You're best off using those read more, show more type. For WordPress, it's called Arcadian. It's just a little option you click and then more content shows. Google will still crawl the stuff that hasn't shown automatically. So you get the UX advantage, but you also get the Google advantage. Thank you. So that's an example there. You can't actually see it, but at the bottom of the page, the category page, there's some content, which you click on read more, boom, that shows. But if you're just wanting a transaction or some kind of conversion, they can scroll through and they're not going to have to scroll through big blocks of text. For non-e-commerce, perform a landing page content audit of the top 3 ranking sites. Could I get a show of hands? Who actually knows if their team does audits on their top 3 competitors for specific for keywords? You do? Great. Yep, some, not many. Okay, cool. This is something SEO is basically a race. It's a race to page 1 and to the top of page 1 against your competitors. If you've got really key keywords that you need to rank, your team, your agency, your whoever it is, should be quite regularly, either quarterly or a couple of times a year, running an audit because Google is going to tell you what it likes. So you want to figure out, okay, what sort of content is ranking? What's the word count there? Figure out what the average is, and that should be your minimum for content to actually, because Google's telling you that's what it likes. Tip 3, for e-commerce, going deeper into categorization. So for example, coffee tables, rather than just having a coffee tables as a category, you might break that down into, black coffee tables, rectangle coffee tables, round coffee tables, obviously using search volumes as an understanding of what demand is out there for those particular terms. We have a fitness client at the moment who have a range of different fitness products. What we found when we first did an audit of their site was there was a whole heap more categorization. There's so many long words in SEO. Categorization, there was a whole lot more that we could have been doing to pull in more traffic. So we found some, specific types of elliptical trainer, some specific types of cable machines that actually had search volume to them that could have its own category page. So there is a way you can grab more targeted traffic to your site and also increase conversion rates because you are getting really specific users with a really specific problem through to your site. For non-e-com, similar to what we just mentioned there in terms of the banking, just having pages which are specific to those services where there is search volume and having that answer that search query. So the example here is asset management, which could be broken into asset planning, asset forecasting, procurement, etc. Here's just an example of a lot of the examples are big fashion brands because they do it really well. So you can just see all of the different types of categories there that obviously have search volume behind them, which is why they've got their own page. Tip 4, core web vitals. Late 2020 and then early 2021, Google came out and said, hey guys, we never do this, but we've got a big algorithm change coming. It's called Core Web Vitals. You should probably talk to your team about making sure that your site scores really, really well on this. It's mostly around page speed experience, right? So if you've got an SEO team in-house or you're an agency, they'll probably jumping up and down for a few months going, Core Web Vitals, we've got to get on top of this. The funny thing was at the back end of it, some industries got hit a lot harder than others because, again, it's a race and you're really just competing against the other people in your space. So if you're in a space where Core Web Vitals was really widely adopted and are also really high domain authority sites with lots of other good SEO stuff happening, then Core Web Vitals might have been a differentiator. If it was an older type industry or a legacy industry, potentially those Core Web Vitals changes you made might not have actually impacted at all. But page speed insights, so if you Google page speed insights, you can run any website through that free tool and see whether you get a pass or a fail on Core Web Vitals. That rolled out in May, June last year. Mobile page speed, critical, needs to be as high as possible, especially if most of your traffic is coming through on mobile, which most industries are these days, but obviously there's some where it's a lot higher than others. That page speed insights, same tool will let you know, and it also points out exactly which parts of your site, which issues you're having with images or other bits and pieces are causing it to load slowly. Search Console. SEOs love Search Console. Other people kind of roll their eyes, but you should be deep diving into that. It's a treasure trove of like amazing information. Everything from what we've got here, splitting of brand and non-brand. Why do you think it's important to split brand and non-brand? Any tips? Why wouldn't you just bunch it all together? They're searching for you. No? Yes, thank you. Go for it. That is a great answer, and I'd love you to say it again into the orange mic so that people at home. Jean, pass it on. Jean, can you pass the orange mic on? Thank you. So the people at home can hear it as well. So the question was, why do we need to split up brand and non-brand?
The answer is because if someone is searching using your brand terms, they're already almost certainly familiar with your brand.
Yep.
Whereas if they're using non-brand terms, more generic terms, they're searching for solutions. So they are much more likely to be potential new customers.
Spot on.
As opposed to returning.
Spot on. Thank you. Perfect answer. So it's about finding those new customer acquisition terms and enlarging those. You've got other parts of your marketing team that are probably doing heaps of work on your brand, which is fantastic, and it's really important. And that's something you should definitely track in Google Search Console as well, because you can start to measure, well, are we actually getting that brand uplift that they're saying we're getting? But then separating out the portion that is non-brand, growing that to bring in a whole heap new customers, really important. Technical issues can also be found within Google Search Console under the coverage section. Lastly, if you've got a new landing page, right, and you'd like it to be launched and actually get crawled by Google really quickly, what do we got coming up? There's a pretty big day coming up in about, 3 weeks' time. What's that day? Yes, cool. So if you've got a product or a business or any type of service which has any type of event or where that particular date is going to mean a type of promotion or something that you're running, if you build a landing page for that and you'd like it to actually get crawled, indexed and ranked, then you'll build that page, pop it into Google Search Console, boom, you might potentially get yourself some free traffic. Applebee's do this really, really well with any new promotion they've got around Mother's Day and that type of thing. So it's a way that if you're going to be, especially, running paid traffic at that page, why not try to get some organic traffic as well? This is a really underused tactic that lots of people don't realize. They build that page thinking, okay, we'll just run paid traffic at it, but it's not going to be up for the rest of the year, so we won't bother doing anything organically. Potentially some free traffic there for you. Tip 7, create high quality internal filters. So this is more specifically for e-com, but making sure that your filters are not indexable. So I'll show you an example here. So say here, we've got another fashion site and the filters are around most popular, featured, most recent, top rated. You don't want those pages, if you click on one of those, to get canonicalized and indexed, because if it is, you're actually wasting crawl budget. So create those filters for good user experience. Don't tell Google to index and rank them, you're wasting crawl budget. Ensure that low value pages, this is the exact same tip, but we're talking about blog tag pages. So when you're searching for an article section, a thought leadership section, a resources section, and there's that search function there, and you want to search for a particular type of service or product within those pages, those little blog tag pages, when that shows up and the URL comes out and it's a bit weird and it's got the question marks, you do not want those indexed. Again, wasting crawl budget. So what we're trying to do is maximize your crawl budget so the pages which are much more important to you are actually getting indexed and ranked. Tip 9, templatize meta titles and descriptions for product pages. So if you've got thousands and thousands of products, for example, then this is going to be really important for you. Tip 10. Now, I should probably say we are tip 10. I've got about 15 minutes to go, so I'm going to be zooming through some of these. If you've got any questions about any specific tip, just hit me up afterwards. Shoot me a message. I'll be here today and tomorrow. So you can come and ask me about a specific tip. Tip 10, make the product pages more information rich. So things like, third-party testimonials, FAQs, how-to guides, videos, UGC, any of that type of stuff is going to help with potentially either enriching the information that you're giving to Google to decide whether they're going to rank you or not, but it also could potentially help get you a bit more real estate on that SERP with, that rich information, that schema, which is getting pulled up and shown. Some examples there. This is the product schema as well. So where you've got ratings and reviews, make sure you've got that product schema on there so that on the SERP, it can potentially show up. The whole idea with the search engine results page is the more real estate you're using on that page, the higher the click-through. So if you've got ads, and then an organic listing, which is, quite big, the chance of you actually getting a click is a lot higher. You can give yourself a much better chance of getting the click with schema like that. Or for non-ecom, same, but just a little different. Rather than product schema, you're looking at things like, let's say if it's an event like Digimarcon, you can have event schema. If it's a recipe, you'd have recipe schema. So you're giving yourself an opportunity to have more content showing up on the page, more click-through. Tip 12, question. How many people, so we've got a few people here who work with SEO, you've probably got some others who are paid search. Who here, show of hands, how often, if your SEO and your paid search teams meet more than, let's say, once every 6 months? Yep, more than once every 3 months, more than once a month, more than once a week, daily? No? Okay, cool. Whether they're internal or external, Google Ads is it's the best opportunity to test user intent. If you're thinking about implementing some keywords, some phrases into your SEO strategy, because our competitors are ranking for it, it looks like it'll do well, best way to test it is to use Google Ads. We've had a client in Australia, a really big university, who I met with a range of their different teams, but their SEO team and their content team and their paid ads team were literally in 3 different buildings and didn't know each other's names. Imagine trying to pull all that together to try to go, well, are we sure these keywords are exactly what we want? Well, you better talk to the paid ads team, go into another building, then go into the content team. It's impossible. You really should be trying to get those teams collaborating much more regularly so that you can be feeding each other with this really cool information that Google Ads is giving you much more quickly than search SEO will. URLs are case sensitive. A lot of people don't realize this. So they're also slash sensitive. So that slash at the end of the URL, what you're doing, remember if you're using a slash or not a slash, every single time you're telling Google what you want it to rank. So if you're using a slash and they're not using a slash, there's 2 different URLs trying to rank for the same content, the same page. So you need to make a decision. Are we with a slash, without a slash? Do we have lowercase? Yes. Uppercase? Yes or no? Tip 14. Limit title tags to 55 to 60 characters so that Google doesn't cut them off, and don't use all caps. So if you've ever done a search where you search for something, you look down the page and you can see one of the top results has got that description there, but it's cut off. You're not 100% sure what they're trying to say. But underneath it, you've got a full message there that you understand. Above it, a full message that you understand. You're much, much more likely to click through on the one that is actually nice and clear rather than the one that's cut off halfway through a sentence. So simple things, but these are kind of basic hygiene things that you can run really quickly with any kind of software, and then run a little rule and figure out, okay, well, what's over and what's under? How can we trim this back so that we're actually getting the click-through that we need? There is an example there of the description. Okay, tip 15, segment your keyword research into the 4 best practice categories. So we've got informational, navigational, commercial, transactional. So informational, top of funnel, navigational, commercial, transactional. You're making your way further down the funnel. Now, depending on your product, depending on your customers, the way you map that out is going to be very different. So what I've got here is an example for e-commerce. So let's say it's a transactional e-commerce. It's under $300 average order value, so it's going to convert, hopefully more often than others. So what we're saying for that is you'd have 25% informational, educational type content about your product, 5% navigational, 50%, and then 20% sit in that commercial and transactional. Because it's an e-commerce site, you're really trying to get them to transact. So you're using 70% of your keyword spread into those product or category type keywords to get them to convert. How do you think that would look in, let's say our friend with the banking product, excuse me, banking man, what was your name? Justin. What's the average length of your sales cycle from someone finding your site through to actually becoming a customer?
30 days, depending on what product is.
3 days. Okay, that's not the answer I thought I was going to get. Does anybody got it? I thought it was a longer transaction. Okay. Does anybody have a long transaction? Let's have an example of, it takes them 3, 6, 12 months until they convert. No one? No? Okay, I'm just going to throw an example out there. Let's say it's a big purchase decision. It's a home, okay? And you're doing that, your research, you're trying to find the best provider, maybe on either it's a brand new loan or it's refinance, whatever it is. I'm not quite ready just yet. Basically what I'm saying is the longer the sales cycle, the more at the top of funnel you want those keywords. So that would be skewed around. You probably have 50% of your keywords in informational, 20% in navigational, and less at the bottom end because you need to nurture and give these people a really good understanding of what you do over a longer period of time. So that's how you use that. Have a think about what yours looks like now, map it out against a couple of your competitors to figure out, okay, do we have the right mix? If you have got a long sales cycle product and yours looks like that, then it's not going to be drawing in enough traffic at top of funnel via SEO. Oh, and I think I've got a video example here of technical and content working together.
What's the number one biggest challenge that you think SEOs face in 2022?
That they're not content writers, or they're not very good at content sometimes. And it's becoming a little bit more siloed. Maybe I'm wrong, but I kind of feel like there's this now, like, Moses has come and the CS split, and tech SEOs are on one side and content SEOs now on the other side. And if they could throw spears at each other and kill each other, they would. You can't do that in public.
So that's Morty Oberstein. He, at the time, was the head of SEO at SEMrush. He's now the head of SEO at Wix. But there has been that schism for the last few years, especially as the algorithm has got more and more technical. Feels like you've got those technical people over here saying, this is what's really important. You've got content people over here saying, well, content is what actually pulls people in. But as that last example of really mapping out your keywords and then figuring out how to make that, look technically on your site, they really need to work well together. Okay, tip 16, optimize your 404s. This is a straightforward one, but don't waste the opportunity. Once you get people landing on a page on your site, it's pretty easy to have a quick rule run across all of those 404s on your site. If you're not correcting them with a redirect, having some kind of content on there that keeps them on your site and potentially has a little fun with them, depending on your brand and your tone of voice. Tip 17, backlinks are great, but internal links are hugely underrated. Does anyone know if their team does an internal link audit on their site? Doesn't happen very often. Yeah, over the back there, yes, 1, 2. Okay, so there's 2. This is super important. If you think about, right, domain authority, right? Domain authority it's a made up term, but it's what us SEOs use to try to figure out whether your site is trustworthy, authoritative compared to a competitor site, right? It's a number out of 100. Domain authority speaks to the authority in your whole site. However, most of that sits in, your homepage, ideally your homepage, and then, 3, 4, 5, 10, depending on how many pages you've got. It could be 100, but other really important transacting or really important pages on your site. What internal linking does is it helps spread that domain authority into individual page authority throughout the rest of your site. As you build the page authority through to other parts of your site, domain authority for the whole site will lift. It's a hugely, hugely underappreciated part of SEO. We've done internal link audits where we've managed to just unlock so much more authority in sites by just sharing some of that SEO juice throughout the rest of the site. It just wasn't getting it. And that's just an example of what can happen once you add internal links and Google goes, oh, wow, there's a whole other site here of really cool stuff that we weren't actually serving to users. Step outside the tools. SEOs love their tools. SEMrush, Ahrefs, Moz back in the day. I swear every time I talk to a new SEO, they've got some new tool that is just, or some plugin that is just like the bee's knees. It's amazing. But, quite often we just overcomplicate it. Google's got the answers. We know what we want to rank for. Go to Google, do those audits, see what it's telling you about what it's ranking, and you can figure out what you need to be having done in your site to get ranked. Tip 19, H1 tags. Okay, so Google recently changed the way that it serves results on the SERPs, and sometimes rather than grabbing the title, it'll actually grab it from the H1. So this is really important. So have a look at your H1s. Are they actually answering what you think that query is about a bit better than what the title is? Because Google assumes quite often it is, and it's popping it there. So really, really important. Have a professional SEO copywriter write your meta descriptions. Now, this can be a controversial one because there's a lot of there's a meme going on. No, there's something on at the moment. Did you guys hear about the guy at Google who got put on leave because he thought that the AI had become sentient? Ugh, it sounds a bit scary to me. But anyway, there's lots of really good AI tools out there who can punch out a whole lot of copy, which is great if you need large volumes of copy. I definitely recommend having humans. I'm a big fan of humans. I think if you can have humans come in and either check over or beef out that content, but your most important meta descriptions, I just think a really, really great copywriter, and I'm a little bit biased because I'm a copywriter as well, is going to have a big, big impact on getting through more click-through from the SERP. Last one, shameless plug. Subscribe to SEO Success Stories every 2 weeks, every fortnight, as we say in Australia. Do you guys say fortnight? No? What do you think of when you hear the word fortnight? Yeah, it's so weird. The rest of the world says fortnight, by the way. Bi-weekly. So every 2 weeks, we release a new podcast, SEO Success Stories. Just search for it in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, etc., etc. Okay, so this is not all out of my head. So I've just got some hat tips here. Sam McQuarrie is our head of SEO. He doesn't have a big brand. He doesn't write books or anything like that, but he does do amazing SEO. I've got him front and center. And then just a bunch of other people that I've spoken to on my podcast and just in conversations on LinkedIn and Twitter and the like. So really, really clever people. If you are into SEO and you're looking to follow some interesting people, I definitely look at that. I'll be sharing this presentation afterwards as well. So you're welcome to steal from it. One last video.
What do you think is the number one biggest challenge facing SEOs in 2021?
The answer, I think unquestionably for me, is insane levels of competition. So most verticals are saturated to the max level, and overcoming this is very tough. And most people don't go and join category-leading monster companies that are already at the top. Some people do, but many people, they join scrappier, more underdog type companies. And you're faced with the problem of, damn, all these other bigger, badder, more powerful companies are dominating the top results for all the most important keywords. And where do we go from here? And I think that's the number one challenge.
Cool. That is Gaetano Donati, good mate of mine. If you're on LinkedIn, you probably see his content. But just talking about SEO and how competitive it's getting, especially as we move into an age where, we sell ads ourselves, but where pay-per-click and CAC and everything is going up. Organic is a really great way to kind of safeguard your site to make sure you're still getting the new customers that you need.